Sisters and brothers, I want to say something before. English is not my native language. With your permission, I prefer to read my paper. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I greet the distinguished participants and the audience at the centenary of his death. I salute the memory of Greek master Lenin and his tireless work. Lenin, who developed and realized the approach on ideas of Marx and Engels, including the national question, is still alive with his work. Marxism-Leninism continues to enlighten our path. We know that Lenin was first and foremost an internationalist against all forms of nationalism. As he said, Marxism cannot be reconciled with nationalism, be it even of the most just and civilized. Instead, Marxism advances internationalism. On the other hand, it's Lenin's opinion that the bourgeois nationalism of every oppressed nation has a general democratic content directed against oppression. In an emerging capitalist society, the principle of nationality is historically inevitable, and Marxists recognize the historical justification of national movements unquestionably. However, this acceptance must not take the form of a defense of nationalism and support only the progressive aspects of national movements against national oppression. Bourgeois nationalism puts the nations and its development before everything else, and based on its superiority over others. This is the source of monopolistic character from which endless national fights arise. The conscious worker, on the other hand, does not look at the world through the national window, does not take nationality as the basis, and warns the masses to stay away from national fights. Lenin, in his debate with Rosa, formulated the following: insofar as the bourgeoisie of the oppressed nation fights the oppressors, we are always, in every case, and more strongly than anyone else, in favor, for we are the staunchest and most conscious enemies of oppression. But insofar as the bourgeoisie of the oppressed nation stands for its own bourgeois nationalism, we stand against it. We fight against the privilege and violence of the oppressed nations and do not in any way condone strivings or privilege of the part of the oppressed nations. Marxists, however, unquestionably defend the rights of nations to self-determination. This is conditioned by the existence of the national oppression and inequalities of rights. The essence of this right is the right of oppressed nations to secede and establish their national states. It is the large scale that is favorable to the development of the productive forces and the struggle of the working class against the bourgeoisie. Other conditions being equal, says Lenin, the class conscious proletariat will always stand for the largest state. However, under capitalism, usually other conditions are not equal. What becomes the rule is national oppression and claims to supremacy and national struggles. Moreover, the tendency of every national movement is toward the formation of national states under which the requirements of modern capitalism are best satisfied. For the entire civilized world, the national state is typical and the norm for the capitalist period. Exploitation and oppression will continue in the national state, of course, but Marxists cannot ignore the powerful economic factors which gives rise to the aspiration for national states, and they cannot deny the rights of oppressed nations to statehood. The unconditional recognition of the rights to national self-determination is, of course, also valid for the period of imperialism. But the recognition of this right does not mean that every national movement and essential will be supported. The right to statehood will be recognized, as Lenin said, however, does not recognize and champion the equality of nations and languages, and does not fight against all national oppression or inequality, is not a Marxist. Lenin is not a Democrat. But Marxists do not support demands for national privilege, reactionary national movements, or the creation of states which reinforce reaction. It is one thing to recognize the right, and it is another to support its implementation in one form or another. On the other hand, to recognize this right is not to adopt the division of voters into nationalities. That would be adopt nationalism and to play into the hands of the bourgeoisie. While recognition of the rights of oppressed nations to separate states, Marxists advocate the strictest unity and the organization of all voters of whatever nationality into a single party and single trade unions within the borders of the given state in which they fight the bourgeoisie. Lenin begins his notable article in 1913, The Critical Marks of the National Question, as follows. It is obvious that the national question has now become prominent among problems of Russian public life. The aggressive nationalism of the reactionaries, the transition of counter-revolutionary bourgeois liberalism to nationalism, Great Russian, but also Polish, Jewish, Ukrainian, and etc. And lastly, the increase of nationalist regulations among the different national social democrats who have gone to the length of violating the party program. All this is incumbent on us to give more attention to the national question than we have done so far. How different is any country today from Tsarist Russia regarding the importance of the national question? Even if we only mention the Kashmir question, are India and Pakistan, for example, very different? Or Turkey and Iran, where the persecution of the Kurds never stops. Not to mention Israel, which is committing genocide in Palestine. Is Russia, which prominent religious Chechen nationalism, invades Ukraine, calling it an artificial nation, and where Turkey blames Lenin for approval of the Ukraine secession, and different today than it was before. What about China, which does not even recognize the right to live to life of Uyghurs? How different would they be from Tsarist Russia if European countries drown migrants in the sea and fully support the genocide in the sea, and the US builds a wall on the border of Mexico, continue racial discrimination and bullets kill black people? Moreover, another reality of the world is international aggression, which does not recognize national rights, plunders the sources of other nations, and violates their independence through occupations. Britain dominated India and Pakistan until the mid-20th century. Pakistan now enjoys political independence, but how independent is it in reality? What is the measure of the independence of Turkey today, which gained its independence through a liberation war? The American NATO bases in Turkey provides intelligence and support for the Iron Dome of Israel, which Erdogan accused in war. Lenin gives the example of dependent countries which ostensibly enjoy political independence, but which in reality are caught in the web of financial and diplomatic dependence, and says that Argentina was almost a commercial colony of England, while Portugal had been for 200 years under English terrains. With their relations with the US, China and Russia, how much less financially and diplomatically dependent on Iran, Pakistan and Turkey, despite their apparent political independence, than Argentina and Portugal of the past. When Lenin was alive, the world was divided economically and territorially between federal states. The demands for redistribution had dragged humanity into a world war. Today, aren't we witnessing the renewal of the division of the world and the federalist competition dragging humanity into a new Great War? Aren't we? China, which was not taken into account in the previous division, and Russia, which is recovering after collapse, on the one hand, and the US, Japan, and the European imperialists, after the Ukraine war especially, on the other, are facing each other, expanding and preparing for war by arming and getting into blocks. China, Turkey's primary import partner, with its at least $70 billion investments in Pakistan and $400 billion deal with Iran, is in race against American imperialism. With an eye to future gains in this race, China, for example, has extended the maturity of Pakistan's $2 billion loan, but has also seized Sri Lanka's Hambantota port and Zambia's National Broadcasting Corporation in return for their debts. The European and the US have been doing similar things for a long time now. For example, with its Troika, the EU caused Greece to launch the port of Piraeus to China after they put Greece into a debt crisis. Rival imperialist blocs treat the first nation as their colonies. The world is therefore not very different from the world analyzed by Lenin. Just as it divided between the rival imperialists and between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, so the world is divided into a large number of oppressed nations and a small number of oppressive nations possessing enormous wealth and great military power, which Lenin emphasized is the distinguishing feature of imperialism. The change occurred due to the collapse of the colonial system after World War II, and the table of the types of countries defined by Lenin concerns the national question. Lenin divided the countries into three main types. One, the advanced capitalist countries of the United States and the Western Europe, where progressive bourgeois national movements have long since ceased. Two, Eastern Europe, where the national question has not yet been resolved. And three, colonial and semi-colonial countries such as China, Iran, and Turkey, where capitalism is underdeveloped. Today, it can be said that there are no colonial countries left. With a few exceptions, there are no countries with little capitalist development, not caught in the webs of minus capital, with no division of the proletariat and bourgeoisie. The world consists of countries with political independence. The colonial system has been replaced by neo-colonial relations, and with their economic, financial, and diplomatic dependence, the political independence of many countries, as Lenin said, is only in appearance. The world is now divided into a small number of imperialist countries and a large category of independent countries with varying degrees of dependence. And of course, the national question continues to exist in all its splendor. In the same article, Lenin states as follows: developing capitalism knows two historical tendencies in the national question. The first is the awakening of national life and national movements, the struggle against all national oppression, and the creation of national states. The second is the development and growing frequency of international intercourse in every form, the breakdown of national barriers, the creation of the international unity of capital, economic life in general, politics, science, and etc. Both tendencies are a universal law of capitalism. The former predominates at the beginning of its development, and the latter characterizes a virtual capitalism that is moving towards its transformation into a socialist society. From this, the following conclusions follow. First, capital is is internationalized, the world is dominated by international finance capital. Now, the amount of imperialist capital produced in the countries that it is exported almost equals the amount at home. And the monopoly capital and the imperialist bourgeoisie are already international. Not only because, such as the examples of Apple and the automatic monopolies for capital production and supply chains being realized in different countries, and the volume of the trade, but the internationalization of capital, that is institutions such as the EU, NATO, the Shanghai Cooperating Organization, IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization, military bases in foreign countries, and political strategically coordinated activities is incomparable with the Lenin period. Monopolies and imperialism no longer have positive relations with their own nation, but Kautsky's ultra-imperialism is observed. Monopolies and imperialism still compete for the share of the world as rivals with a national tendency, but this national, of course, interpretation centered in certain states like US, China, Russia, Germany. It is not only the imperialist bourgeoisie that no longer represents national interest. Apart from its lower sections, the bourgeoisie of the dependent countries that collaborate with imperialism is also part of the international bourgeoisie. Its interests, which are in contradiction with the interests of nations, are linked to the interest of the imperialist bourgeoisie with which it is united. Second, under imperialism, the awakening of national life and movement has not ceased. In the past, it's mainly targeted feudal fragmentation and repression. However, capitalism, which has shown an significant development in the colonies and the dependent countries that it has added to its wheels, has limited the influence and role of feudalism to a small number of countries. Imperialist plunder and tyranny are now the main causes of national awakening. Imperialism today is also the main source and stronghold of national tyranny. Lenin states that the treatment of the national question cannot be immutable. He considers it a strict requirement of Marxist theory that the question should be formulated under certain historical limits, and that in the case of one country in particular, the peculiarities which distinguish each country from the others should be taken into account. From this point of view, the period of the rise of capitalism, when the national question was a struggle between the bourgeoisies of different nations for the domination of the market, he states that there is only one solution to the national problem, and that solution is consistent democracy. Nothing that so far as it can be solved in the capitalist world, the world of profit, struggling, and exploitation. With the acceleration of the internationalization tendency of capital and capitalism, the national question begins to cease to be an international problem of individual countries and acquires an international character. With the October Revolution, it turns into a question of the liberation of oppressed nations, colonies and semi-colonies from the plundered and tyranny of imperialism. In his thesis on socialist revolution and the right of nations to self-determination, written early in 1916, Lenin puts the national question in a different light. He begins by stating the imperialist socialism must give effect to the right of oppressed nations to free political secessions, and goes on to say that the socialist revolution is not one single battle, but a rule upon of intensified class conflicts and long series of battles, which can culminate only in the expropriation of the bourgeoisie. It would be a fundamental mistake to delete any of the points of the democratic program. For example, the point of self-determination of nations on the ground that is infeasible under imperialism. And it concludes as follows. All the fundamental demands of political democracy are possible of achievement under imperialism, only in an incomplete, in a mutilated form, and as a rare exception. The demand for the immediate liberation of the colonies is also possible of achievement under capitalism without a series of revolutions. This does not imply, however, that social democracy must refrain from conducting an immediate and most determined struggle for all these demands. On the contrary, it implies that it is necessary to formulate and put forward of all these demands in a revolutionary way, not by keeping with the framework of bourgeois legality and leading up to the socialist revolution, which will exaggerate the bourgeoisie. The solution to the national question no longer lies in consistent bourgeois democratism. Lenin formulated this in his thesis for the Second Congress of the Communist International. The fourth of his thesis is as follows. From these fundamental premises, it follows that the Communist International follows that the national and the colonial question should rest primarily on a closer union of the proletarians and the working masses of all nations and countries for a joint revolutionary struggle to overthrow the landowners and the bourgeoisie. This union alone will guarantee victory over capitalism, without which the evolution of national oppression and inequality is oppression and firstly, while there is still the question of the liberation of the nations under national oppression and inequality of rights in various countries, the transformation of the national question into the question of the liberation of the oppressed, dependent and colonized nations from the imperialist yoke is also valid today. Secondly, the program of the working class on the national question is now based on the solidarity of the workers and the laborers of all countries in the struggle against the ruling bourgeoisie and a big landlords and their power. By the second of the same cases, the solution of the national question as the question of the liberation from imperialist tyranny is now linked to the struggle for the overthrow of the power of the bourgeoisie and the establishment of socialist democracy. Thirdly, not only the imperialist bourgeoisie and its domination were targeted by the greed of global revolution. Lenin's thesis also distinguished between the bourgeoisie of the oppressed nations and colonies and the national movements, making their support conditional and with special emphasis on the preservation of the independence of the proletarian movement, drew attention to the deception of imperialism and the bourgeoisie of the oppressed nations united with it under the mask of building independent states. In the reports of the Commission on the National and Colonial Question submitted by the Lenin to the Congress, the attitude toward national movement is clear. The imperialist bourgeoisie is doing everything in its power to invent a reformist movement among the oppressed nations too. There has been a certain rapprochement between the bourgeoisie of the exploiting countries and that of the colonies, so that very often, perhaps even in most cases, the bourgeoisie of the oppressed countries, while it will support the national movement, is in full accord with the imperialist bourgeoisie. That is, joins forces with it against all revolutionary movements and revolutionary classes. It should and will support bourgeois liberation movements in the colonies only when they are genuinely revolutionary and when their exponents do not hinder our growth of education and organizing in a revolutionary spirit with peasantry and the masses of exploiters. If these conditions do not exist, the communists in these countries must combat the reformist bourgeoisie. The tendency of rapprochement and agreement at the beginning, the relationship of the bourgeoisie of the colonies with imperialism, mentioned by Lenin, gradually developed in almost all countries, whereas the native bourgeoisie was tied to imperialism by thousands of ties. The upper sections of the bourgeoisie became the mainstay of imperialism with which it united and collaborated. In parallel with the export of capital and the economic division of the world, the process of the development of the capitalism in almost every country and the formation of domestic monopolies as well as foreign has also been the process of the merger with the imperialism of the upper sections of the bourgeoisie in the independent countries which have fallen into the web of dependence. The political consequence is that the type of ostensibly dependent countries has generalized in parallel with the generalization of neocolonialism and has come to cover the vast majority of such countries. Now, the big bourgeoisie of the dependent countries, it has not developed as an imperialist bourgeoisie under special conditions as China. Has not only compromised with imperialism, but has become completely reactionary by linking its interest and destiny with those of the imperialist bourgeoisie. It has completely betrayed its own nation, which has no unity of interests. Together with imperialism, it is the target not only of social liberation, but also the struggle for national liberation. A direct consequence of these phases for the present is that the national liberation movements which can be supported in the dependent countries are clearly revolutionary movements of the main lower classes, of the workers and peasants. Despite their tendency to compromise, the weak revolutionary movements of non-monopoly bourgeoisie can only be possible if they turn to the struggle with imperialism under special conditions such as occupation. Apart from exceptional cases, the actions of reactionary bourgeoisie and power in dependent countries cannot be regarded as anti-imperialism and supported because of their accepted pro-independence rhetoric. The counter-revolutions of the bourgeoisie, of the bourgeois cliques that we have witnessed in the recent past, usually instigated and supported by the rivals of imperialists with whom the ruling bourgeoisie collaborates, are not supportable movements in this category. The attitude towards the struggles of the oppressed nations has become even more important today than the imperialist states, whose rivalry is intensifying, seek to gain superiority over each other by provoking and supporting national movements against their rivals. Undoubtedly, as Lenin pointed out, the fact that the struggle for national liberation against one imperialist state can, under certain conditions, be used by another great state for its equal imperialist interests, does not dissuade Marxists from recognizing the rights of nations to self-determination. Marxists' self-determination recognize the rights of oppressed nations to self-determination, but this does not mean that a national movement against one imperialist state supported by a rival imperialist state must be supported. The struggles that are supported are determined by a concrete analysis of the conditions and the nature of each struggle. One cannot fight against one imperialist relying on another one. Even if they use anti-imperialist rhetoric, reactionary movements that are linked to the struggle for hegemony between the imperialists and become an element of it cannot be supported, regardless of their claims. The actions of the ruling bourgeoisie of the NATO and the Shanghai Cooperating Organization member countries, supposedly on behalf of the whole nation, with claims such as anti-occupation and protecting and defending the independence and sovereignty of their countries in order to deceive the people they oppress and bring them along with them can be given an example. There is no doubt that the nation of Ukraine, for instance, needs national and social emancipation with the right to self-determination. And for this purpose, they need a real struggle targeting their own bourgeoisie. However, no matter how much it claims to be against occupation, the Zelensky government and the war it wages in the name of so-called independence and sovereignty in Ukraine, which is the field of the imperial struggle between Russia and NATO cannot be supported. As a result, Marxism-Leninism, the doctrine that Lenin took over from Marx and Engels, is the doctrine of the emancipation of the working class. It expresses the interests of working class and is based on the class struggle. Lenin's analysis of the national question and his contribution to the treatment of this question cannot be underestimated. But it is not the essence of Lenin's contribution to the treasury of Marxism. Besides analyzing imperialism and applying Marxism to the age of monopolies, Lenin's main contribution is to develop the theory and practice of the class struggle, its extension to the dictatorships of the proletariat, and the application to the conditions of socialist construction. Thank you very much.